Hey everybody, and Tony here with a review of Beethoven's Fidelio, live from the Metropolitan Opera House with conductor Sebastian Weigle, which I heard online on Classical 94.5 WNED. I was anticipating this particular radio broadcast because Hanna Elisabeth Müller, a young soprano whose career I've been following for quite some time, made her Met debut as Marcelina, and she was joined by some really great veterans, most notably Adrian Pijanka as Leonora, Klaus Florian Vogt as Florestan, Falk Struckmann as Rocco, Greer Grimsley as Don Pizarro, David Portilla as Giacchino, and Günther Greusbeck as Don Fernando. So the question is, how did all these singers fare? Well, let's find out right now, starting off with Adrian Pijanka as our title heroine, Leonora, who is disguised as Fidelio. I have been following her career for quite some time, and as I stated before, her repertoire mainly spans the spinto soprano repertoire, mostly emphasizing on the Germanic repertoire. Roles like Zenta, Eva Pogner, Elsa, the Tannhäuser Elisabeth, Deglinde from Die Walküre, Chrysothemis, Arabella, and the Marschallin, and especially the likes of the Empress from Die Frau ohne Schatten. My experiences with hearing her live were mainly limited to her performances of Amelia from the Deutsche Oper Berlin's production of Un ballo e maschera, and of course her stirring rendition of Chrysothemis from Richard Strauss's Elektra, one time when I heard it as the final Met Live in HD production of seasons 2015 to 2016, and of course that one time I heard her at the Staatsoper im Schillertheater in that very same role. What more can I say about Madame Pijanka? She's a very nuanced singing actress. She really gives it her all in every role she does, and she's just a very fine singing actress all throughout. Granted, some of the top notes she produced did sound a little bit shrill and sounded kind of squally, but I still have to give loads of credit to Madame Adrian Pijanka for being such a committed singing actress. It's not an easy job really conveying this role, especially if it's being recorded on the radio, and she was able to embody Leonora's determination, toughness, and overall loyalty to her husband, as it was just a very fine rendition all throughout. It should be no surprise that Adrian Pijanka has been singing this role for quite some time, ever since she started building up her repertoire to singing a lot of the spinto / dramatic soprano roles. So I could definitely tell that she had a lot of experience really understanding who Leonora is as a character and really finding out what makes her tick, what makes her motivated, what makes her really feel this way. And it was just delivered in a way that was quite natural, and it made me feel so involved in her vocal performance from beginning to end. So even though she did have some problems in terms of how some of the high notes sounded a little bit shrill, I still have to give her loads of credit as to how she managed to portray Leonora. And if you know me, I do prefer a slightly mezzo-soprano sounding voice or even a steelier sounding voice to really portray Leonora. Voices like Helena Braun, Astrid Varnay, and even what we had back then with Waltraud Meyer come to mind. But despite all that, I still have to give my hat off to Adrian Pijanka for a job well done, especially when it comes to really giving a lot of nuances to make Leonora come alive as a character. Klaus Florian Vogt was a very musical Florestan. Yes, I'm not really a major fan of his voice in this particular role, but I still think that he is a very superb musician. He's very focused on all the notes, and he just manages to really sing his part very, very well. Granted, I would have loved to have a slightly spinto sounding voice. Voices like Peter Anders or even the likes of Jonas Kaufmann would have fitted Florestan a lot better. But even with all that said, Klaus Florian Vogt continues to be a very fine musician. This is an example of someone who may not have the right voice for these type of characters, but his musicianship and his total commitment to the art of opera, and especially when it comes to really hitting all those notes really well, was just something that I have to really give a lot of kudos to Herr Vogt for, because he is a very fine musician, which should be no surprise as he had his beginnings as a French horn player, which is why he was able to produce a lot of really fine and silken tones, even though I felt like his voice, much like his other roles, was a tad bit on the light side. But I still have to give it to Herr Vogt for his really fine musicality and how he was able to play off of Adrian Pishanka's Leonora in a very fine manner. But what more can I say about him? Herr Vogt was a very fine musician with his style and ease and the way he was able to enunciate all of these words, and he was just a very fine singer all throughout. He may not always be the best choice when it comes to roles like Florestan or Lohengrin or Sigmund, but I feel like he continues to be a very fine musician when it comes to hitting all of those notes. Then we go to the beta couple of Iachino and Marcellina, starting off with David Portilla as Iachino. I have heard a lot about this gentleman for quite some time, as he specialized in a lot of the light lyric tenor roles, and I'm really impressed with the versatility he has in those said roles. He specializes in the Mozart roles of Pedrillo and Tamino, but he also specializes in a lot of the bel canto tenor roles, most notably Almaviva from Il Barbiere di Siviglia, Tonio from La Fille de Regiment, Don Ramiro from La Cenerentola, and a lot of these other great high-flying tenor roles. And from what I can sense in his performance as Iachino, I really felt the youthfulness and exuberance he was able to give with this particular character. He was able to sing his role really well, helped with great precision, and a voice that is so easy on the ears. He has a very pleasant sounding voice, and it's a voice I would really love to listen to again and again and again because of just how pleasant, well-tuned, and how really nice it sounds like. It's a very handsomely tuned voice, and it's also very youthful, which is no wonder why Mr. Portillo is very ideal for roles like Iachino, or Tamino, or Pedrillo, or Tonio, or Almaviva, and a lot of other great high-singing tenor roles. And I thought that he did a very great job as Iachino, embodying his boyishness and really making him a charming character. Hanna Elisabeth Müller was an equally charming Marcellina. I have followed her career for quite some time, ever since I was about 19 years old, and she was quite a young singer who specialized in a lot of the soubrettish parts. And from what I can tell, this is a young soprano who has a very bright and awesome future. And I could definitely see her going places, as she did start off singing in a lot of the German opera houses, most notably the Munich State Opera, known in German as the Bayerische Staatsoper, and here she is singing in a lot of the international opera houses, and I am really proud of her. This is a young singer who has a very bright and awesome future. She really has a gorgeous sounding voice, which is so light and breezy and lovely and silvery throughout all the registers. I definitely had a huge smile just come across my face when I heard her sing. It was a very pleasant voice, and she just had a lot of fun really embodying Marcellina's innocence, charm, and feistiness, and she did an amazing job singing the role of Marcellina, and she just had superb chemistry with a lot of her colleagues. In the role of the dastardly Don Pizarro was the very wonderful Helden baritone slash bass baritone Greer Grimsley. I really love the color of his voice. It sounds dark and rough and really menacing, which makes him so ideal for all of these ambiguous slash villainous characters. Roles like Wotan, Telramund, and even that of Scarpia. There were times I noticed that he did have a little bit of edge to his voice, as in there were times that he sang certain notes rather sharply, and there were times that he did sound a little bit squally on some of the notes, but despite all of that, he was still able to give such a menacing portrayal of the prison governor Don Pizarro, helped with his finely tuned bass baritone voice despite having a little bit of that edge, and he just did a very great job embodying this villain of a character. I mean, he was quite menacing in terms of how he sang Ha welch ein Augenblick with such furor, and at the same time a bit of strength, confidence, and bravado that he was able to embody Don Pizarro very, very well. Falk Struckmann was a very decent Rocco. When I heard that he was going to sing this particular role, I was quite skeptical because if you know me, I really prefer a basso profondo singing roles like Rocco. And I thought he did a very decent job of how he was able to embody Rocco. And he did have a very fine voice because let's not forget, Falk Struckmann did start off singing a lot of the Heldenbariton slash bass baritone roles, but nowadays he seems to specialize in a lot of the basso profondo slash basso cantante parts. And what he offered as Rocco was a very fine sing all throughout. It's not my most favorite voice for this particular role because I really love it when voices like Gottlob Frick or Josef Greindl or Georg Ritasi sing this particular role. Heck, we could have even had the likes of what we have today with Albert Pesendorfer to embody this particular father figure to Marceline. But despite all that, I definitely have to say that Falk Struckmann did a pretty solid job singing the role of Rocco, even though I do prefer a true basso profondo to embody that role. Then we go to Günter Greusbuck as Don Fernando, and I really, really love his voice. As I stated before, this is the type of gentleman who is extremely ideal for all of these noble and strong characters. And even though Don Fernando appears in the final act, his vocal presence is just felt all around. I feel his nobility, I feel that strength that he has in his character, and I just really love his voice all throughout. So overall, the singing was really, really good all around, but I have to give my hat off to Hanna Elisabeth Müller for a very successful Met debut, and the conducting done by Sebastian Weigler was very solid, even though I would have loved to have some moments to be slightly faster and have a little bit more blood and guts, if you know what I mean. But despite some of the minor issues I had, like the Ha welch ein Augenblick could have been having a lot more pizzazz, I still felt like Herr Weigler did a very decent job for leading the Met Orchestra and chorus. And I especially have to give my hat off to Kang Wang and Paul Corona, who sang the roles of the two prisoners, as they were matched in great musicality and they just sounded really great all around. And I also have to give my hat off to the Met's chorus and orchestra for continuing to do a very fine job. So overall, when you have really fine singers like Hanna Elisabeth Müller, Adrian Peschanka, Günter Greusbuck, Falk Struckmann, Greer Grimsley, Klaus Florian Vogt, David Portilla, and a very fine conductor like Herr Sebastian Weigler, who led the Met's orchestra and chorus, then you definitely have a Fidelio that was really fine all around. And for those of you who heard this particular radio broadcast, what did you think of it? Was there a singer who stood out to you so much? Did you feel like the singing could have been a lot better? Or did you feel like there were certain things that didn't really hold up to your very standards? Comment below and let me know. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for my review of Modest Mussorgsky's Sorensky Fair. So until then, good night everybody.